The first great persecution of Christians had nothing to do with their faith. It was a cover-up for a devastating fire, an emperor's greed, and a punishment so horrific it became the ghoulish centerpiece for an emperor's private party. The year is 64 AD. The air in the Emperor Nero's private gardens is thick with the scent of jasmine and roasting meat. Laughter and music drift from the grand pavilions, where Rome's elite drink wine from silver cups. The sprawling grounds are a masterpiece of imperial luxury, with shimmering fountains, priceless statues, and manicured hedges. But tonight, there are no torches. There are no bronze lamps burning oil. Instead, the winding paths and moonlit clearings are illuminated by a series of tall, flickering pillars of fire. As a senator strolls past one, he averts his eyes from the gruesome detail. The light is not coming from wood or wax, but from a human body, smeared in pitch and nailed to a cross. The face is a mask of silent agony. Frozen in the moment, the flames erupted. This isn't a public execution. It's party lighting. How did a fringe religious sect become the grotesque centerpiece for an emperor's private festivities? This is the story of how the first great Christian persecution began, not with a clash of faith, but with a handful of embers, an emperor's ambition, and a lie that would stain the pages of history forever. To understand how a human being becomes a party decoration, we have to understand the city they lived in and the man who ruled it. The Rome of 64 AD is a paradox, a city of breathtaking marble temples and squalid, dangerously overcrowded wooden tenements. At its head sits Emperor Nero, a man who sees himself not as a ruler, but as a supreme artist. He dreams of a new Rome, a city rebuilt in his own image, a glorious Neropolis that will be the envy of the world. But his ambition is matched only by his paranoia and his desperate need for public adoration. The Roman people are a volatile force. Their love can make an emperor a god, but their hatred can turn him into a corpse overnight. Into this powder keg walks a new religious sect, known as the Christians. To the Romans, they are deeply suspect. They are a secretive offshoot of Judaism, known for their strange rituals and their refusal to worship the Roman gods, an act of profound disloyalty to the state. Rumors fester in the city's taverns and marketplaces that these Christians practice cannibalism in their rites, that they engage in incest, that they are atheists who despise all humanity. They are the perfect outsiders, the perfect scapegoats, living on a knife's edge of social acceptance. The stakes could not be higher. For Nero, his entire legacy is on the line. He needs a reason, a grand opportunity, to tear down the old, ugly parts of Rome and build his magnificent vision. Failure to keep the people happy could mean a swift, bloody end to his reign. For the Christians, the stakes are their very existence. They practice their faith in the shadows, but that shadow is about to be set ablaze. The public stakes are the future of an empire. This moment will set a terrible precedent, creating the legal and social framework for nearly 3 centuries of brutal, state-sanctioned persecution. The fuse is lit on the hot summer night of the 18th of July, 64 AD. A small fire breaks out in the shops surrounding the Circus Maximus, Rome's great chariot racing stadium. In a city of wood and wind, it's a spark in a tinderbox. For 6 days, Rome burns. The fire leaps from the tightly packed wooden shops to the multi-story apartment blocks called insulae. The city becomes a furnace. The sound is a constant roar, punctuated by the crash of collapsing roofs and the screams of those trapped inside. Emperor Nero, who had been vacationing at his seaside villa in Antium, rushes back to a scene of utter chaos. For a moment, he rises to the occasion. He opens his personal gardens and the public buildings of the Campus Martius to shelter the tens of thousands left homeless. He coordinates emergency food supplies from the port of Ostia and issues an edict lowering the price of corn. For a brief, shining moment, he is the savior of his people. a leader in a time of crisis. There is a glimmer of hope that Rome, and its emperor, will emerge from the ashes stronger. Then, the hope turns to cinders. Just as the fire seems to be under control, it erupts again. This time in the Aemilian district, an area owned by Nero's thuggish and widely despised Praetorian prefect, Tigellinus. The flames rage for another 3 days. Suspicion turns to anger, and anger curdles into a single citywide rumor, whispered in every refugee camp and breadline. Nero did this. They say he wanted to clear the land for a new, golden palace. They say he stood on the roof of his palace and, as his city turned to ash, he played his lyre and sang of the fall of ancient Troy, reveling in the destructive beauty of the scene. The rumor is a fire of its own, and it is burning straight towards the emperor. The adoring public that Nero craves has become a mob that wants his head. Nero is trapped. His relief efforts are forgotten. His popularity is shattered. He is now the most hated man in Rome. He and Tigellinus understand that a city's rage needs a target. It cannot be them. So, they go searching for one. The perfect scapegoat must be small enough to crush, but strange enough to be hated. They find them in the city's shadows. The Christians. It's a masterful, cynical calculation. A handful of Christians are arrested on flimsy charges. Under brutal torture, they confess to anything and everything, including arson. More importantly, they name others. The floodgates of persecution are thrown open. This is the point of no return. Nero now has his justification, his enemy, and his story. The state apparatus turns its full, terrifying force on this small religious community. The descent into horror is swift and methodical. This will not be a simple execution. It must be a spectacle. A piece of grand, horrific theater to distract and satisfy the bloodlust of the Roman people. Some Christians are rounded up and sewn into the skins of wild animals. They are then thrown into the arena to be torn apart by hunting dogs for the amusement of a jeering crowd. But for the grand finale, Nero devises something new. Something uniquely his. He announces he will host a magnificent party in his own private gardens, the very gardens he once opened to the homeless. This time, the guests will be the Roman elite. The entertainment will be the Christians. As dusk falls, the condemned are brought out. They are not simply crucified. They are nailed to wooden posts that line the garden paths. Their bodies are then coated in thick, flammable pitch. As Nero and his guests begin their feast, soldiers move from post to post with lit torches. One by one, they set the victims alight. The gardens are filled with a ghastly, flickering glow. Nero, it is said, even dons a charioteer's costume and drives his personal chariot through the avenues of his estate, mingling with his guests and admiring the ghastly light cast by the burning bodies. The screams of the dying are drowned out by music and laughter. The party is a wild success. The city, for a time, is appeased. As the last guests stumble home in the pre-dawn light, they leave behind a garden of smoldering crosses, silent under a sky thick with smoke. In the immediate aftermath, the grotesque garden party achieved its cynical goal. The Roman public's anger was redirected from Nero to the Christians, and the emperor's grand building project began. On the scorched earth where countless Romans had lost their homes, Nero began construction of his magnificent Domus Aurea, or Golden House, a palace of unprecedented luxury. But the monster he had unleashed could not be so easily controlled. While the persecution provided a temporary distraction, it did nothing to solve the deep-seated political rot in his regime. His extravagance, cruelty, and paranoia continued to alienate the Senate and the military. 4 years later, in 68 AD, faced with a massive revolt, Nero was declared a public enemy by the Senate. He fled Rome and, with his capture imminent, took his own life. The historical domino effect of Nero's actions, however, would far outlast his reign. Before the Great Fire, Roman persecution of Christians was sporadic and localized, based on mob action rather than official policy. Nero changed that forever. By formally charging Christians with arson and hatred of the human race, he created a legal precedent. He made their very identity a crime. For the next 250 years, emperors like Domitian, Trajan, and Diocletian would build upon this foundation, launching waves of systematic persecution across the empire. Nero's lie became imperial policy. The image of the human torch became a powerful symbol for the Christian faith, a horrifying testament to the brutality of the Roman state, and a rallying cry for martyrs. But the ghost of this event lingers in a place few would ever expect. The site of Nero's gardens, where the human torches burned, was just outside the old city walls, on a place called the Vatican Hill. It was a place of public spectacle and execution. Decades later, it was on this very spot that the Apostle Peter was himself crucified. And centuries after that, when the Christian faith had gone from a persecuted sect to the official religion of the empire, its leaders chose that ground hallowed by the blood of its first martyrs to build the most important church in all of Christendom. Today, St. Peter's Basilica stands on the exact location of Nero's circus and gardens. The epicenter of the Catholic world is built directly on top of the ground where its first great persecution reached its depraved climax. It is one of history's darkest ironies, a place of unimaginable horror, designed by a tyrant to entertain his friends, became the sacred ground for a global religion. Nero's attempt to burn the Christians out of existence instead forged their identity in the fires of martyrdom. He intended to make them a footnote, a forgotten scapegoat for a fire he may well have started himself. Instead, his actions ensured they would never be forgotten. The Golden House is long gone, buried beneath the streets of modern Rome. But the faith he tried to extinguish now has over 2 billion followers. Nero's use of human torches is a uniquely grotesque chapter in the long, dark history of persecution. What part of this story do you find the most chilling? Let us know in the comments below. The past is filled with these forgotten horrors and twisted ironies. If you believe these stories need to be told, subscribe to Dark History and join us as we drag them back into the light.